So, welcome to another Cheap Hammer Battle Report. Today, we're going to have pretty much just a repetition of the last battle report, which was a fantasy battle report from High Elves against Warriors of Chaos. The issue was that the last battle didn't last that long, so they decided to just remake the battle without the rules of the tower, the battle setting. So they just decided to just play elimination, each army on each side, and they kept both of the lists the same. So on the side of the Warriors of Chaos, you still get the two chariots, the marauders, the orc trolls, some of the orc ogres, or sorry, chaos ogres and chaos trolls. I think there was also some Warriors of Chaos and the Wizard of Chaos and the champion that he had. He had a wizard, typical level 4, Mark of Nurgle, and he had a champion. I think it also had the Mark of Nurgle. And side of my brother, he kept his main Death Star of Swordmasters of Hoed with the Noble and the Wizard in there. 2 units of archers, his Illyrian Rivers, and I think that was it. So let's go to the next picture. So on the next turn, pretty much just Warriors of Chaos advance. It's just well, not taking in consideration the chariots. Everything just moves as normally. You can march with them, so everything just moved. Nothing failed stupidity, and yeah, everything progressed. There seems to not be any damage so far. No wounding, no casualties. So I expect that nothing from no magic missiles or anything or vortexes reach the high elves, and there has been no retaliation from the elves. Suppose let's see the next picture. So on side of the high elves, the Illyrian rivers move on the flank of the Warriors of Chaos. I suppose it's because ogres of Chaos and everything on Chaos, when they have the mark of Corn, they are prone to they are um, they are forced to charge because of frenzy. So yeah, I think the strategy over there was to kite them, maybe outside of the battlefield, or just make them go on rounds and just not being able to charge the main units. However, it's important to mention that the problem is also that we didn't know that with frenzy, uh, you're forced to charge, but you can also decide what target to charge. Like the important thing with, I suppose that the important thing with frenzy and when you want to apply a strategy like kiting, it's just to be able to, like, you gotta put your units way in the flank and a little bit away from your main block. For example, in this case, you got the archers, swordmasters, archers. So you shuffle them a little bit more to the, let's say, the right side of my brother. So you shuffle them a little bit more, and you leave the Illyrian rivers more away. You leave them more into the flank. So once you come over here to try to use your arrows and then fire and flee and everything, what happens is that you just you kite the ogres, and since they don't have any other units to redirect their charge, they are forced to charge the alien rivers, and then is when that strategy works. But when some other units are also on charge range, then they just can decide to just like charge those units instead and go for the failed charge instead of you're prosecuting a unit that they're not going to reach it, and it's just going to cost them it's just going to cost them their time, and they're not going to be able to do anything. So they're just going to redirect all the time, or just take the failed charge and just keep moving forward. So yeah, it's good to notice that instead in case that somebody wants to apply this certain kind of rules. But yeah, in this case, it kind of didn't work. But let's go to the next picture. Ned, I need to notice. Well, I need to notify one thing, that in between the last and this picture, I had some errands to run to. So of course I had to do some stuff. and then I was able to just to come back and to see the rest of the battle. So a lot of things happened. Obviously, the chariots haven't got into charging position, but the trolls made it, and the marauders of chaos they did it as well. Now some challenges were issued, I believe. Probably if the challenge was issued by the champion, probably the champion of the Sword Masters of Hoenn took it, because it's not very wise to start just shoving your heroes onto the Chaos champions at first. Why? Because there is a big difference between Chaos champions and champions from other races. They not particularly have the edge, especially with elves. They got the advantage of striking first, but I don't think the amount of wounds that you're gonna cast are gonna be sufficient to just kill him. And on the other hand, the Chaos Champion is sufficiently strong and has enough wounds and enough attacks and enough gifts and enough etc and saves to be able to kill your hero on the first round of combat. Now, and I think like the best strategy is what I previously mentioned in other battle reports, is just to start like shoving some minor heroes into him to get slaughtered, so you can just keep the important ones, or the ones that buff your units, or that give certain like or maybe you can go for more like the combat resolution, or you can go more for the striking against the unit, so you can like temper the odds. You can like maybe go to in old world it will be giving ground or something like that, but in fantasy, it will be just to pin the other unit there and just keep going with the battle. Maybe you exhaust his forces, and then with one or two champions that you shove into him and just accumulate a certain amount of wounds. Maybe you can kill his champion, and then that's it. But it's very risky to start throwing your champions to the slaughter at first. You gotta go for some minor ones so you can keep the buffs and etc etc. So in this case, like champions of chaos or chaos champions are I see it, they are obligated to issue challenges. So the wisest thing is just to answer them with like minor characters, and then work yourself to the important ones. So overall here, you see some of the marauders have been killed. They probably were killed from the stand and shoot of the archers. And yeah, like here's an interesting thing as well. Like what we were discussing in the previous battle report, which was also fantasy. High elves against warriors of chaos, is like when you take in consideration marauders of chaos. Well, they don't say very well. But the only thing that they have is like they got like they two based attacks and then plus frenzy. So and they got flail, so you got strength 4, 3 attacks, so you got a bunch of attacks with them. But when it comes to saving and really battling again other like melee units, they don't have like the upper hand. Not really. So you can easily kill them with units that strike first. As in this case, it was what our buddy Merlin was saying, because he was the one that was playing Warriors of Chaos. He says like actually like high elf archers are pretty good against like Marauders of Chaos because of the strike first. So you get your first line, or whoever is in contact, or maybe you can shove a hero over there or something like that. They're always going to strike first, regardless of who the other race is. Especially in this edition, where the sword masters were like one of the most like aggressive unit ever. They could easily just wipe sufficient units from their enemy target in order for them to, when they retaliate, it wasn't with that amount of strength. It was like completely like the unit was so destroyed, and most of the unit was killed, that when they retaliated or when they hit back, that was the advantage of the sword masters of war, that they could just like, okay, take the wounds that they need to take. But what they deliver with those always strike first, great weapon, and two attacks, and etc., it was just insane. And let's not mention if you get some power-ups of some ward saves or some things like in fantasy, that you could just upgrade your ward save, or also, for example, what was the name, the walk between worlds, and then you make him ethereal, so that the enemy is forced to just hit you with magical weapons. If they don't have them, well, sorry, then you just receive damage. In any case, let's get back to the battle. So yeah, that's pretty much what happened. Like the warriors of chaos with halberds have not arrived. I think there was an engagement between the trolls over there, or I think it was the ogres and the Illyrian rivers. But I think the Illyrian rivers, if I think they escaped, but or maybe they failed to charge them, and then they just fled and just keep shooting arrows at those ogres, which are not gonna cause any damage. Which is the other thing. It's like kiting is not necessarily a strategy to, because you're thinking about destroying the other unit. Mm, it's just redirecting it, and but you're not looking to just like kill it or to cause any wounds. You're just distracting it so that you can just focus on other units that are on the battlefield that are more dangerous at the moment. Or perhaps the one that you're kiting is the dangerous one, so you want to focus on the more simple units so you can just destroy them, and then perhaps by insufficient turns, you don't even need to deal with that unit that you just guided. Why? Because it's so bad, it's so out of the way, and it's so bad, and it doesn't reach, and it's just so slow that by the end of the game, at the sixth turn or fifth turn, you already understand that unit was not going to do anything. So anyway, let's go to the next picture. So it's an overall, it's another view from the same battlefield. Well, this the what you can see is like everything pretty much stays the same. Just probably there's going to be some casualties on the side of the high elves, but until now, well, not much has been happening. Let's see this next picture. So some throws over there. So I assume it's just for the charges. Try to get up. If you see, like for example, the warriors of chaos with the halberds have been beaten down, have been beaten down by the high elves probably, or some other spell that they cast at them. Now this is where the high elves shine. It's like, at least in the previous edition in fantasy, like the archers of the high elves were really good because of the ranks that you can fire. You can fire with all of them. So if you got a unit of 60 archers, well, that's going to be 60 arrows, and that is very difficult to just like to just mitigate, even with armor saves or something like that. If your unit or your elite unit is very strong, but in terms of just armor saves or ward saves or something like that, by law of probability and statistics, I mean, like some of those 60 arrows are gonna get through. Now, the problem that you're facing is like some of those elite units when it comes to just like when it comes to warriors of chaos, let's remember that at the end of the day, they're not like demonic creatures or something like that. They're still humans inside of those armors and everything. So they are just like it's very obvious that they're gonna have one wound. So from 60 arrows, yeah, okay, maybe when you get ballistic skill 4 or something like that, maybe 4/6 of that amount are going to go through. And then with wounding, if you get resistance 3 or resistance 4, let's say an average of 15, 10, something like that, maybe 15, something just to have a certain parameter over there. Let's say from 60 it becomes 15 arrows, because I didn't crunch the numbers really well over here. But let's say that you get those amount of arrows. Now he's gonna have to throw saves. Now those saves, the problem is like half of them in on armor save. Let's just say that you save on 4 pluses. Like half of them have to go through. Now 7 ones doesn't sound like nothing. For example, for armies like Skaven or armies like sometimes the Empire as well, or Bretonnian Man at Arms or things like that. I say 7 ones. I'm ready to receive 7 wounds. Bring it. 7 ones is a good day. But with armies like Warriors of Chaos, 7 wounds are 7 wounds, So it's 7 Warriors of Chaos that you just lost. You multiply that by attacks and all the things that they got, and you're really sustaining a lot of damage. And if they wipe out the unit, that's pretty much like GG at that point. So yeah, like yeah, the archers did some some nasty damage, and perhaps some of the sorcerers and everything did some nasty damage to those warriors of chaos. But the chariots are getting in. That could potentially be dangerous. The problem with the chariots is they have a toughness of 5, and they have the chariot save. So what you're dealing with is like when you throw arrows that are on strength 6 and strength 3, sorry, against chariots that are toughness 5, sometimes these chaos chariots, we are doing at 6s. So when you go back to the 60, you have to have the complete block of archers to be able to bring down one chariot, in one round. They got like three ones or something like that, so it's not that far fetched. But then when you're already hitting on six, when you're already like, sorry, when you're already wounding at sixes, you might as well not shoot anymore. It really doesn't count. Unless it's like, okay, 60 arrows to get three wounds. That could possibly be the case, but then again, it's like it's nasty. You need some things also to deal with high toughness targets when you're on the battlefield. You can't just not rely on the arrows. The arrows are great, at least in fantasy. In old world, like we have seen it with Imperial Riflemen, and we have seen it with High Elf Archers, and we have seen it with a couple of different armies. Like we were proxying an army of Wood Elves just to test them around and things like that. And we'll see that unless that you got ballistic skill 5, they're not really worth it to bring to the battlefield, at least in old world. You have to get like there has to be some arcane journal that they maybe create in the future that get certain units to buff those range units, either from the High Elves or from the Empire, like the Celestial Hurricanum and the Luminarch of Hish from the Empire. I remember that they used to give bonifications to like shooting units, so that could be very nice to bring back. And from the high elves, I don't know, maybe you can bring some archer heroes that you can put them in your archer units and they can make you ballistic skill 5. Then it's worth it to put the units of archers back in the game. But there's other things that you can choose the archers, definitely. I'll explain it in the next picture. Like for example, you don't necessarily have to have like for example in old world, which is mainly the game that we're playing, you don't necessarily need to put like big blocks of archers because it's a waste. Volley fire just allows you to, if you're on a hill, which is very situational. Of course, if you the I think like the logical way that you should like create a list in order, or at least a competitive list before you go into battle, is first you get a picture of how the map looks, and you analyze um, all the little things that are for scenery, hills, woods, buildings, cover, everything. And then based on that, like that could give you a hint. Or if I deploy on this position, what advantages can I get? And if I deploy on that position, what advantages can I get? So you come to, you can, start like um, idealize what units are you gonna deploy based on just like the information that you get, and you gotta be congruent in both of those deployments with some units. Like for example, either on this side or this side, it's convenient for me to deploy a unit of etc etc. So it's like so you be congruent on some of the units. And and then I come back to the same point. It's like for example, when you get volley fire and all those things, well, what it insinuates is like if you have a hail, then you can have most of your archers firing. But that's very situational. It's like, what if you come to a game where you don't have any heals? Which is in most cases, and maybe you just have one heal. There's not like two or three or five heals on the game. It's very difficult to put um, all those pieces of scenery in the battlefield sometimes. It's very situational. So it's a rule that really does not apply. It's just like there's no way of profiting out of a rule like that because it barely happens. It's not sustainable. But what you can do, for example, is like there's a thing called chaff deployment, which is pretty much just make like small blocks of archers, let's say 5 archers, which is the minimum. And you put, okay, I'm gonna put when it's the deployment, and when you want to see what is he going to deploy in order to just put your units correctly or in the position where they could be most favorable to just counter his other units, you just use chaff blocks. And what I mean with chaff blocks, you can use 10 spearmen, or you can just 5 archers, so just 5 spearmen or 5 archers. So you just put like small blocks, okay, 5 archers over here, and another 5 archers over there, and another 5 archers over there, and another 5 archers, and then bam, he deploys one of the big units. Okay, now I'm gonna put my let's say a bolt thrower or something like that over here, because I got it like perfect perfect view, and I got perfect line of sight to just start targeting it from turn number 1. So that's a good way that you can use the archers, that you can bring the archers back, and it gives you, of course, the 30-inch range and everything. It gives you a couple of possibilities when it comes to wounding. You still got your archers, and you got some shots over there. So that's a way that you can use them. But as I said, like big blocks, the only thing that's going to happen is that the guys in the back are not going to fire. So you're just like having points that are not like really justifying themselves. Anyway, so back to the game. The chariots arrived, though the warriors of chaos with halberds arrived. Oh no, though they didn't. But the chariots have arrived, and they will just tear havoc into the main formation. As I said before, like the arrows, you can stand and shoot, yeah, definitely. But when the thing is toughness 5 and it got like a 4+ ward armor save, etc., etc., and you receive a charge from a chariot, then it's pretty much GG at that point, because it's like most of the things that you're going to put on the battlefield are just gonna get slaughtered. So let's see what happens in the next picture. Yeah. So yeah, most of the units of archers have been slaughtered, been destroyed. And at this point, like the main unit of sword masters of Hoed also has been, it's not a unit that is going to sustain, that's going to be there for a lot of time. That's one thing to take in consideration. It's not a, it's a great unit, especially here in fantasy. It's a great unit. Now, on the first or second turn of combat, they can really create a lot of damage. But staying there, no, these are elves, and elves are toughness 3, and elves got 1 wound, and elves have barely no armor saves. So yeah, like anything that fights back is just gonna cause wounds, and these are very costly ones because these are very elite units. So yeah, at this point, it's pretty much it. And also, like the champion of chaos and the sorcerer of chaos got like massive stats when it comes to battling. So it's very difficult to counter this. Let's see the next picture. So yeah, that's like this is like an aerial view of the last picture of the battlefield, and it's pretty much a victory for the Warriors of Chaos. Things to learn, like I previously mentioned, like I mentioned it before, everything that was to take in consideration over here. But of course, one of the things was the guiding. Be very specific in how you're going to put the units or how you're going to deploy your units to perform the ability of guiding, so that you can just really redirect the enemy. And it doesn't matter if you destroy them with arrows, because guiding units don't have necessarily the most strongest weapons, and unless, like for example, they could be like outriders or something like that, or pistoliers, but it's not that sufficient damage, especially not against chaos ogres or chaos trolls, something like that. The regeneration and the toughness is just too much. But also, like archers are a great unit in fantasy to counter or to fight back against other melee units because of the strike first, and you get the stand and shoot, you get the strike first and everything. And of course, they got no save, but in comparison to the Spearman, there's not really much of a difference. Like Spearman used to work in fantasy because of the fact of you put them in a line of 10 with like maybe five ranks behind. So you get like the first rank, then the supporting attacks of the spears, then the horde, and then they have another rule that was just specific to the high elves. So then you get 40 attacks. So you get 40 attacks from a unit of 50 spearmen. You can buff them up or make the material, something like that. Now that is a sustainable amount of attacks. Now you can really put some damage into your enemies. But when it comes to old world, they have lost those abilities. It's very situational when to use them. Most of the videos that I've seen on the internet, or most of the battle reports or tactics that I've seen from other channels on the internet, they say just put them on the shelf for now. There's not really any use for spearmen and the archers. As I said, the only strategy that I see is like what I explained before. But again, when it comes to the competitive level, they're not really getting that. In this particular case, of course, they did a wonderful job, but this is because it's fantasy. But of course, there was not anything particularly in this high elf list to destroy the other units of Warriors of Chaos. Now, net to be noticed that also my brother told me that he wasn't throwing his best magical throws, so that was completely, of course, there's the odds that are stacked against you. It's like when your magic doesn't work with an army that requires magic, then that is very troublesome. That's one thing that got fixed, obviously, in old world. Like you can still cast magic with any of your wizards, but then when it comes to, like, not no particular army like surpasses another one in terms of magic. If you see it in old world, like, it's very leveled. You don't see these like spikes of like powerful magic as you used to see in fantasy with old world. You see more like, for example, people just like using fireballs or some magic missiles. What I've gathered, or at least what I've learned during the time that I played, it's like most magical vortexes and templates and things like that from Magic just doesn't really work. Like, the best things are enchantments and conveyance spells, and sometimes some magic missiles. But just use the ruby ring so you can get fireballs. But what do I mean with the enchantments and the conveyance spells? Well, the enchantments, you can cast them in your command phase. You can boost up your units. You can make them tougher. You can make this, blah 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 blah. You can make a lot of things. Hexes, why do I say that hexes are not that good? Because hexes have a certain range, and then you're getting close to the enemy in order to target your hex. But then by that point, you're too close also to the enemy for him to be able to dispel it. Now, enchantments work differently. When you use your enchantments in your command phase, well, you get that advantage of at least that you are far away from the dispel range, and you can just boost your units. Now, if you're really looking for a hex, something like that, make sure you pack a power scroll, and you have to be very specific. You have to remember what unit are you going to hex and use the power scroll so you can just not miss. And try to use a wizard level 4, because if you use a wizard level 2 or something like that, where you're dealing um, with most cases, a wizard is going to dispel it that is higher level than you, and probably maybe even has some artifact or some item that gives them a +1 to the dispel. So you're literally on that particular case, you would be kind of like a wizard level 1. So most of the hexes and things like that are very powerful. If you put a wizard level 2, if you get a hex that has a casting value of 9 or 10, but you're looking to get 8 on 2 dices, and that is very difficult. It's like you have the odds stacked against you, and you got the chance of getting that dispel. That's what I mean with the hexes. And then magical vortexes and fireballs and magic missiles. That's why the idea that I had behind, or what I'm trying to convey, is that is why do I say that the conveyance spells and enchantments are the best? Because those are the ones that you can keep in distance. You can actually get a better chance of just like just casting the spells without the enemy being in the spell range and using his level 4 wizard to dispel it. Now, here's the other thing that I just don't understand. Why is this happening? Like, if you put, let's say that you break up a strategy in which you put a lot of level 2 wizards. But then the thing with it is like, there is no limit of dispelling when it comes to enemy wizards. And I think that's kind of broken, because they can just use one level 4 wizard and they just keep dispelling and dispelling and dispelling everything that you got, because they got the advantage of those 2 points plus whatever they put on your wizard. So I think that's a little bit broken. I think the wizards should first be able to dispel one spell, and then you can keep, so that if you break a list that is just purely wizards and things like that, just to cast fireballs and magic missiles at the enemy and things like that, that should be a possible strategy that he's not expecting, like a magical attack, a magical theme-based army or something like that. He was not expecting it. But when it comes to that, it's like if you just put one good level 4 wizard with something that just makes the spells even stronger, then you're going to cancel most of the fireballs and vortexes and well, not necessarily fireballs, but you get what I'm saying. Like, all the magic missiles and the vortexes and the hexes are just going to get dispelled, because sometimes you make these big blocks of infantry and you put a level 2 on it to give it boosts, but make sure those boosts are enchantments or conveyance spells. Why? To keep your distance. Once you reach to the point in which you get a hex that has an 18-inch range, something like that, you are also most probably in range to get dispelled. So you got a 50-50 chance that you're, first of all, you got a 50-50 chance that your casting is gonna go, and then you got another 50-50 chance that your casting is gonna get dispelled, or even higher, maybe 60 to 40, or sometimes 70 to 30. So those are not good odds. That is really gambling for one hex. And then when you break the math a little bit in terms of how much the wizard cost you, how much is he performing, and how much he did at the end of the battle, you realize that you didn't do anything with it. There was literally points that you could spend on a war machine or something like that to be able to do more damage. So that's at least what I've seen is like hexes, vortexes, and magic missiles, very situational, enchantments and conveyance. That's your go-to. That's what you have to go for. Things that protect your army, that boost your army, that gives you ward saves, that saves you, that move you. All of those things are quintessential. But yeah, better for the Warriors of Chaos. So it was a great battle. It was really nice to see these old school miniatures from the first editions of Warhammer back in the game and just playing here with us on Chip Hammer. But that's it for this battle report. I hope you like it, and we'll see you on the next one.